Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are opening up a file that is equal parts sawdust and microphone foam.
That's a good way to put it.
We're looking at a figure who is, let's be honest, a massive bundle of contradictions.
Yeah.
He's a guy who started out, digging ditches and cleaning carpets, a literal blue-collar tradesman.
Right.
Who somehow morphed into a Guinness World Record holder for digital media and a New York Times bestselling author.
It is a fascinating trajectory. We're talking about Adam Carolla, and what makes this deep dive so interesting is that his career arc really, it really mirrors the evolution of modern media itself.
It does.
He goes from terrestrial radio dominance to the wild west of early podcasting, and in doing so, he actually helped build the infrastructure that allows us to be having this conversation right now.
Exactly. I think a lot of people know him as that guy from The Man Show or, the loud voice on Loveline.
Sure, the sound bites.
But when you dig into the source material, the story is about so much more than just telling jokes. It's about tenacity. It's about carpentry, both literal and metaphorical, and it is definitely about controversy.
He is certainly a polarizing figure, but whether you find him hilarious or abrasive, you can't deny the impact he's had on the independent media landscape.
No, you can't.
So our mission today is to really unpack that transition. How does a broke boxing instructor become a podcast mogul? And how does his specific worldview, that pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality, inform everything from his comedy to, his legal battles?
So grab your hammer and your headphones. Let's start at the very beginning. And when I say the beginning, I mean a surprisingly chaotic one. You'd expect a guy who is so obsessed with order and construction to come from a structured background.
But it was the exact opposite.
The complete opposite.
Yeah. Adam Carolla was born on May 27, 1964. No, even his birthplace is a bit of a point of confusion in the records. Some sources will tell you Los Angeles, some say Philadelphia, but he identifies very deeply with his San Fernando Valley upbringing.
That's his identity.
That's his brand. But the real chaos, as you said, it starts with his family dynamic.
Right. His parents separated when he was young, and he has described his home life as just, unstructured. There wasn't a lot of guidance, and there is this hilarious but also kind of telling detail about his name. He doesn't have a middle name.
He does not. Or at least he didn't legally have one to start.
And this is one of my favorite anecdotes from the research. So he's a teenager, right?
Yeah.
He's filling out his driver's license application, and he gets to the box for middle name and realizes, I don't have one.
Right. It's just blank.
So as a joke,
Yeah.
a complete throwaway gag, he writes in Lakers, like the basketball team.
Just the Lakers.
Yeah. And the bureaucracy being what it is, you'd think someone would flag that, right?
You would think, but no, nobody checked. It was processed. So for a time, his legal identification, his driver's license, essentially read Adam Lakers Carolla.
It's funny, but it also speaks to a sort of neglect he felt growing up. He often jokes that his parents were so checked out they couldn't even be bothered to give him a middle name. It's a joke, but there's a kernel of truth in there.
Oh, absolutely. That theme of being checked out, as you put it, that seems to plague his education, too. He went to schools in North Hollywood, but he didn't actually get his high school diploma on time.
And not because he failed his classes, which is what you'd probably assume.
Well, not entirely anyway. It was because of a library fine.
A library fine? Are you serious?
Completely serious. The school held his diploma hostage over an unpaid library book. It's such a petty, bureaucratic hurdle, but it's something that it stuck with him.
I can imagine.
And years later, in 2005, when he had his own TV show called The Adam Carolla Project, he actually went back to the school on camera, paid the fine, and finally received the diploma decades later.
That is playing the long game. That is some serious dedication to a bit.
It is. But that resentment toward, arbitrary authority and bureaucracy, that's a seed being planted right there. You see it come up again and again throughout his career.
So he's struggling in school. His home life is a mess. Where does he find stability? Because he clearly found it somewhere. That drive had to come from someplace.
Sports, specifically football. He played Pop Warner for 7 years, and he credits that structure, the practice, the clear rules, the physical exertion, with basically saving him from the chaos at home.
It gave him a framework.
It did. And he wasn't just a bench warmer. He was actually a standout player at North Hollywood High. The records show he was first-team offensive line in the Central Valley League in 1981.
Offensive lineman. That makes so much sense. It's the grunt work.
Exactly.
It's blocking, it's pushing, it's not the glory position, it's not the quarterback, but it's essential.
Yeah.
You can't win without it.
And that mentality, that sort of head down, do the work approach, carried over directly into his early adulthood. We can call them the lost years.
The lost years, right.
He's 18, he's living on his own, he's on academic probation at a community college, and he eventually just drops out to enter the workforce. And not in entertainment. I mean, not even close.
No. He is cleaning carpets, he is teaching traffic school, and most importantly, he is working as a carpenter.
He's working with his hands.
Yeah, and there's this great visual from the sources where he describes being absolutely broke, just dirt poor, living with a bunch of roommates. But they pooled all their money to buy a 1963 Cadillac limousine.
A very, very impractical vehicle for a carpenter.
Completely impractical. Can you imagine showing up to a job site in that? But it paints such a picture. Just these guys cruising around the valley in a beat-up limo, trying to figure out life.
It does. But the carpentry thing is so important. He wasn't just doing it for a summer job. He did it for a long time. He really identifies as a tradesman, as a builder.
He still does.
He does. And that tradesman mentality, you know, measure twice, cut once, build a solid foundation, is something he explicitly applies to comedy later. He views jokes as construction projects. They have a structure. They need to be built correctly to hold weight. If the foundation is weak, the whole thing collapses.
So how do we get from the construction site to the radio station? Because that is a massive, massive leap. It's not a logical career progression.
No, it was pure serendipity. It's 1994. Carolla is still working construction, but he's also working as a boxing instructor on the side, another physical discipline trade.
Right.
And the biggest morning radio show in Los Angeles on KROQ, Kevin and Bean, is doing a stunt.
This is the famous Blita and Reseda.
That's the one, exactly. They have their on-air personality, Jimmy the sports guy, who is preparing to box another radio personality in a charity match.
And they needed someone to train him.
They needed a trainer. And Carolla, who was a fan of the show, volunteered. He just called in.
And Jimmy the sports guy turns out to be
Jimmy Kimmel.
Talk about a meeting of the minds. A sliding doors moment.
It changed everything for both of them, really. They hit it off immediately. Carolla wasn't trying to be a star. He wasn't auditioning. He was just being himself. Funny, loud, incredibly opinionated. And Kimmel, who has a great eye for talent, recognized it instantly.
He saw something there.
He did, and this led to Carolla getting a recurring spot on the show as a character named Mr. Burcham.
Oh, Mr. Burcham, the cranky, disgruntled woodshop teacher.
Which was barely a character, let's be honest. It was essentially Carolla channeling all his frustrations with the education system and what he saw as the softening of society, filtered through the lens of a woodshop teacher who thinks everyone is an idiot.
It's the classic right what you know. He knew woodshop, and he knew he was annoyed.
And people loved it. That character resonated deeply with the KROQ audience. It got him his foot in the door.
And once that door was open, he kicked it down. This leads us directly to the Loveline era.
A huge era.
Loveline. I mean, for a certain generation, this was the Bible of late-night radio. You had Dr. Drew Pinsky, the board-certified physician, thoughtful, calm. And then you had Adam Carolla. It's the oddest couple imaginable.
It was a classic Iden superego dynamic. It was perfect radio. Dr. Drew was the reserved, thoughtful professional trying to give legitimate medical and relationship advice.
And Carolla was the everyman. He was the guy who would interrupt a serious medical diagnosis to make a fart joke or go on a 20-minute rant about how traffic lights are timed inefficiently.
But that's why it works so well, right? If it was just Dr. Drew, it's a medical lecture, it's informative, but maybe a little dry. Carolla made it entertainment.
He was the chaos factor.
He was. He served as a counterweight. Critics at the time described him as a toned-down version of Howard Stern minus the huge ego. He brought this relatable blue-collar frustration to the airwaves. He mocked the radio format itself while he was on the air.
He hated the tropes.
Hated them. The morning zoo cliches, the goofy sound effects, the weather reports, the traffic updates. He would deconstruct them live on air. He'd rant about why a traffic report telling you there's traffic on the 405 at 5 p.m. is the most useless piece of information imaginable.
Okay, let's unpack this. That became his whole vibe. He would take something incredibly small and just drill down into it until it was absurd and hilarious. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. He has a history of, well, stepping on toes.
He does. And an early example of this comes from the Loveline period. In 2003, the show was actually canceled in Hawaii.
Canceled, like just in that one market.
Just in Hawaii. Carolla made some disparaging remarks about Hawaiians during a broadcast, calling them dumb and inbred and a bunch of other things. The local station, KPOI, pulled the plug immediately. There was a huge backlash.
So that was an early indicator that his unfiltered style had real-world consequences.
A very clear one. But on the mainland, his stock was just rising and rising. And in 2006, he gets the call. The big one.
The biggest one.
Howard Stern is leaving terrestrial radio for satellite. It leaves this massive void in morning drive time radio. And who do they call to fill that slot in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, San Francisco, these huge markets?
The Carpenter.
The Carpenter was a massive promotion. The Adam Carolla show on terrestrial radio, he wasn't the sidekick anymore. He was the anchor. He was the guy.
And he was so convincing, so authentic as this cynical radio host that Hollywood actually started studying him for parts.
That's right. The actor Gerard Butler, he was preparing for a role in the movie The Ugly Truth, where he plays a cynical talk radio host. So he actually sat in on Carolla's show for days just to study him, to capture that specific brand of masculine, slightly jaded, rant-heavy radio persona.
But the terrestrial radio era had an expiration date on it.
It did, and not because of ratings necessarily, but because of the shifting sands of the industry itself. In February 2009, the flagship station for his show, KLSX in Los Angeles, flipped formats overnight.
Flipped formats, which means...
You went from talk radio to top 40 music.
So on Friday, you're hosting a morning show for millions of people. On Monday, they're playing Katy Perry on a loop.
Effectively, yes. He was fired. The entire staff was let go. The show was just gone.
And this moment, February 2009... This is the pivot point. This is the whole story.
This is where the empire part of the title comes in. Because most people in his position would have immediately gotten their agent on the phone, scrambled for another radio gig in another market.
Right, they'd try to get back in the system.
But Carolla did something completely different. He didn't try to get back in the system. He decided to build his own.
He went to his garage, or his home office, I guess. He launched the Adam Carolla podcast literally days after being fired.
February 23rd, 2009. His radio show was canceled on a Friday. The first podcast was up the following Monday.
The speed is incredible.
And the numbers were instantaneous. We have to really put ourselves back in 2009. This is early for podcasting. People were still explaining to their parents what an RSS feed was. It was a niche medium.
And yet, he gets 250,000 downloads in the first 24 hours.
250,000. By the third episode, he is the #1 podcast on iTunes in the US and Canada. In that debut week, he hit 1.6 million downloads.
Those are numbers that major networks kill for today, let alone in 2009 when maybe, 10% of the population even knew what a podcast was?
It proved something fundamental. It proved that the audience wasn't loyal to the radio station. They were loyal to him. He had built what he called his pirate ship. He owned the content. He owned the distribution. He owned the relationship with the audience.
And it just kept growing.
Exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
By May of 2011, so just over 2 years later, the show officially broke the Guinness World Record for the most downloaded podcast.
Guinness World Record.
Yeah. We're talking 59,574,843 unique downloads between March 2009 and March 2011.
That is just staggering. He beat out Ricky Gervais, who was the previous record holder.
He did. He proved that an independent creator with a loyal audience could build a media entity bigger than what the traditional gatekeepers could offer.
But that kind of success, that kind of disruption, it attracts attention. And not always the good kind. We have to talk about the patent troll.
This is a critical chapter, and it's not just for Carolla's story, it's for the medium of podcasting as a whole. In 2013, a company called Personal Audio sued Carolla's production company, Lotzi Digital.
And what were they claiming? That they invented ranting into a microphone.
Close. They claimed they owned the patent for episodic content distribution. Essentially, they had a very vague patent from the pre-internet era about distributing audio in a series, like on cassette tapes.
You're kidding.
No. And they were arguing that any podcaster who released episodes in a sequence with a playlist function was infringing on their patent and owed them licensing fees.
So they were trying to put a toll booth on the entire internet. They were saying, if you create a show that has an episode 1, an episode 2, and an episode 3, you owe us money.
Precisely. They had already gone after other big names in media, and a lot of companies just settled. It's cheaper to pay the troll a few thousand or even a few $100,000 than it is to fight a multi-million-dollar legal battle.
But Carolla said no.
Carolla said no. This is where that stubborn offensive lineman mentality comes right back to the forefront. He viewed it as an existential fight for the entire industry. He saw it as extortion.
He wasn't just fighting for himself.
No, he was very clear about that. He went public with it. He called them out as patent trolls on his show. He refused to settle. And he did something remarkable. He crowdfunded his legal defense.
He went to the listeners.
He went directly to his audience and said, "This isn't just about my show. It's about every podcast you listen to. Help us fight this." And they did. Listeners contributed over $475,000 to his legal fund called Fund Anything.
Wow. That just shows the incredible connection he had built with his audience. They weren't just listeners. They were constituents. They were investors in the idea.
And it worked. The public pressure was immense. In August of 2014, Personal Audio dropped the suit against him.
So he won.
He did. And he didn't stop there. He actually countersued to try and invalidate their patent entirely, to take the weapon out of their hands so they couldn't go after smaller independent podcasters. They eventually settled that with a quiet period, but Carolla had made his point. He positioned himself as the defender of the medium.
So if he had folded, if he had just paid them off.
It could have set a precedent that would have made podcasting prohibitively expensive for independent creators. The whole landscape could look very, very different today.
So while he's fighting these huge legal battles and breaking world records, he's also keeping a very active foot in television. We can't ignore the visual side of his career.
No, and it really runs parallel to the audio work starting back in the late 90s. The most famous project, of course, is The Man Show.
The Man Show. Ziggy zaggy, oi, 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 oi. This was late 90s, early 2000s Comedy Central. He co-created it with his partner in crime, Jimmy Kimmel.
It was a celebration of, well, unapologetic masculinity. It was beer, it was juggies, it was girls on trampolines, it was bathroom humor.
It definitely has a specific legacy. Looking back at it now through a 2026 lens is an interesting experience.
It is. At the time, it was a massive hit. Critics often called it sexist, and you can see why. It's very much a product of its time, that frat pack era of comedy. But it was essential in establishing Carolla's brand. He wasn't trying to be highbrow or sophisticated. He was the voice of the guy in the cheap seats.
He also did Crank Yankers, which was another Kimmel collaboration.
Yes, which actually revived the Mr. Burcham character, this time in puppet form. That show was basically puppets making real prank phone calls. It sounds ridiculous on paper.
But it was huge. It had successful runs on Comedy Central and later on MTV2. It was a cultural touchstone for a little while.
It was, but what's really interesting to me is his foray into reality TV, because he seems like the last person who would do it. He did Dancing with the Stars in 2008.
I have to stop you there. Adam Carolla, the carpenter, the boxer, the guy who rants about fixing your own sprinklers on Dancing with the Stars.
It went about as well as you'd expect. He was eliminated pretty early, I think in the 4th week.
Shocker.
But in true Carolla fashion, he went out on his own terms. His final dance was a paso doble, where he rode a unicycle across the dance floor.
A unicycle. In a paso doble. That is...
Yeah.
That's a choice. That's a statement.
It was. And then there was The Celebrity Apprentice in 2012. He was on the show and was fired by Donald Trump in week 4.
What was the reason for his firing?
The task was to create a presentation for a new car. Trump felt that Carolla didn't properly utilize his teammate, the racing legend Mario Andretti, during the presentation.
Which is deeply ironic because Carolla is a massive, massive car guy. We'll get to that. It just seems like he struggles in these environments where he has to play by someone else's rules.
He does much better when he's the boss, or when he's in his element, which brings us to the show, Catch a Contractor.
Right, on Spike TV.
This was the perfect synthesis of all his skills. He used his legitimate background in construction to ambush and expose unethical contractors who were ripping off homeowners.
He had the authority. He wasn't just a TV host playing a part. He could walk onto a shoddy job site and say that's not up to code, or you didn't use the right materials here.
Exactly. He wasn't just a host, he was an expert witness with a camera crew. It was a perfect fit.
He also moved into film. And not just doing cameos. He wrote, produced, and starred in a movie called The Hammer.
This is a bit of a hidden gem in his filmography. It's a semi-autobiographical independent film from 2007. He plays a guy who's nearing 40, works in construction, but was a talented amateur boxer in his youth and decides to give it one last shot.
Sounds familiar.
Very. But it was well received. It got an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. And again, with the authenticity, it was filmed in a gym that he actually helped build with his own two hands years before.
He also got into crowdfunding his films, much like he did his legal defense.
He did. He raised funds for Road Hard, a movie about an aging road comic struggling after his TV and movie career dries up. Another semi-autobiographical theme.
You see a pattern here.
And he also co-directed and produced documentaries which show a different side of him. Winning, the racing life of Paul Newman. The 24-Hour War, which is about the Ford versus Ferrari rivalry at Le Mans.
These are serious, well-researched films. They reflect his deep obsession with mechanical excellence, with engineering, with history. It shows that he isn't just a comedian. He's a historian of the things he loves.
And we have to mention the books. He's a multiple New York Times best-selling author.
With titles like In 50 Years We'll All Be Chicks, Not Taco Bell Material, and I'm Your Emotional Support Animal.
Yeah.
They reflect his persona perfectly.
But the writing process is unique.
Right. He doesn't sit down at a keyboard and type.
No, he hates typing. He openly admits these books are largely dictated. He rants into a microphone, records his thoughts and stories, and a ghostwriter helps structure it into prose. It's essentially his podcast in book form.
It's efficient. You have to give him that. But, okay, let's pivot to the elephant in the room. His worldview. You cannot talk about Adam Carolla for more than 5 minutes without talking about his politics and the controversies.
It's completely central to his brand. And it's complex. He often describes himself as a mix of Republican and Libertarian.
If you're not hurting anyone, you should be able to just do what you want to do.
Yeah.
That seems to be the core philosophy.
That's the core of it, yeah. He aligns with conservatives on things like secure borders and opposing what he calls the welfare state or freebie programs. He is huge on personal responsibility. If you fail, it's your fault. If you succeed, it's because of your merit, the get up and go to work mentality.
But then on the other hand, he aligns with liberals on a lot of other things.
Completely. He is on the advisory board of the Marijuana Policy Project. He's been a vocal advocate for legalizing weed for years. He's against automatic weapons. He supports nuclear power to charge electric cars. And he's a staunch atheist. So he doesn't fit neatly into the Christian right box at all.
Not at all. But he has found himself in hot water plenty of times over his comments.
Repeatedly. The list is long. A major one was in 2012. He gave an interview to the New York Post where he flat out said, and I'm quoting, "Dudes are funnier than chicks."
Oof. That is the third rail of comedy right there.
It sparked a massive, massive backlash from comedians and the public. He later defended it by saying the media oversimplified his point, that he's talking about the different styles of comedy, but the quote itself was pretty direct, and that's what landed.
He also faced criticism from GLAA.
He did, for comments he made about the LGBT community, specifically making fun of a petition to have Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street get married. It drew condemnation and calls for an apology.
And there was an incident involving the Philippines?
In 2010, yeah. He was talking about the boxer Manny Pacquiao and called him a fucking idiot, and then made some pretty disparaging remarks about the country as a whole regarding sex tourism. That one was so intense he actually did issue an apology via Twitter.
Which seems rare for him. He tends to double down rather than apologize, doesn't he?
Usually. He views himself as a warrior against cancel culture. He argues that we shouldn't judge past behaviors, like teachers paddling students in schools, by today's standards, that the world has gotten too sensitive.
And he put his money where his mouth is on that one. He made a whole documentary about it.
He did. No Safe Spaces, which he co-starred in with the conservative talk show host Dennis Prager. It specifically attacks the concept of political correctness and safe spaces on college campuses. It cemented his position as a major voice in that cultural debate.
And very recently, in January of 2026, he made headlines again for leaning into that role.
Yes. A major performing arts venue was controversially renamed the Donald Trump and John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Arts. A lot of other performers canceled their appearances in protest due to the political association with Trump.
But Carolla said yes.
Carolla agreed to appear. It fits his brand perfectly, though, defying the progressive orthodoxy, going where others won't.
It does. And it raises that central question. Is he becoming more political as he gets older, or is the culture just shifting in a way that makes his long-held views seem more radical?
That's the big question to unpack. It's a fascinating dynamic.
Let's shift gears literally. We touched on it with the Trump firing, But the man loves cars. This isn't a casual hobby.
No, he is a serious, legitimate collector. The sources say he owns over 20 vehicles, and not just shiny new Ferraris. He likes vintage race cars with history, with provenance. He owns some of Paul Newman's actual race cars.
The Paul Newman connection is amazing. He directed a documentary on him, and he owns the cars.
He does, and there's a great story involving the show Pawn Stars from just a couple of years ago in 2024.
What happened?
He brought his 1972 Paul Newman Ford Escort race car onto the show. He was thinking of selling it, and his asking price was around $250,000. But the show's experts evaluated it and told him it was actually worth up to $300,000. So after learning it was more valuable than he thought, he decided to keep it. It shows he knows the value of what he has, and he's not just going to give it away.
And he owns Lamborghinis, but the really rare ones, right?
The Miuras. He owns 2 of them. For anyone who doesn't know, these are incredibly rare, incredibly beautiful supercars from the 1960s. Many consider them the first true supercar. And he even lent one to the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles for an exhibit.
It's another example of the Carpenter side of him. And it's not just about the flash. He appreciates the history, the design, the engineering.
Absolutely. It's about how things are built.
Let's look at the personal side of his life, which he's been pretty open about on his show. He was married for a long time.
He was. He married Lynette Paradise in 2002. They have twins, a daughter Natalia, and a son Sonny.
But they announced their divorce in May of 2021.
They did. After 19 years of marriage, he talked about it extensively on the podcast. It was obviously a very difficult period.
That's a tough blow for anyone to go through, especially so publicly.
It is, and for a guy who often preached about the importance of family and stability as the bedrock of society, it was a personal challenge to have to navigate that in the public eye.
And on the faith front, you mentioned he's an atheist.
Yes. The sources say he was raised in a light form of Buddhism by his parents, but he completely rejected it as he got older. He's a staunch, outspoken atheist. He believes in the here and now and what you can see and touch and build with your hands.
He did receive a major honor recently, though, which must have been a validating moment.
A huge one. In 2025, he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for his contributions to radio.
That really feels like a full circle moment. A kid who couldn't get his high school diploma because of a library fine now has his name permanently embedded in terrazzo on Hollywood Boulevard.
It absolutely validates the entire journey, from the construction site to a public access TV show to the Walk of Fame. It's a remarkable American story, however you feel about him.
So, when we put all these pieces together, what does it all mean? When we look at Adam Carolla, what are we really looking at?
I think we're looking at a bridge. He is the bridge between the old world of blue-collar, manual labor, and the new world of digital media. He's the guy who monetized ranting. He took the frustration of the common man, the guy stuck in traffic, the guy dealing with a lazy contractor, and he packaged it into a digital format.
And he proved you could build a business empire on it without a corporate overlord.
Exactly. He cut out the middleman. And maybe most importantly, he literally fought the legal battles to keep that bridge open for everybody else who wanted to cross it.
So whether you agree with his politics or his jokes, if you're listening to this right now on a podcast app,
you owe a small debt to the legal precedent he helped set against those patent trolls. He made the road a little bit safer for all the independent creators who came after him.
That's a really powerful takeaway.
So here's a provocative thought to leave you with. Adam Carolla started his career on The Man Show, surrounded by beer and trampolines. It was pure, unapologetic, juvenile escapism.
Right.
Now, he makes serious documentaries about free speech in no safe spaces and appears at highly politicized venues. So the question is, how much of that evolution is a change in Adam Carolla himself, and how much of it is a change in the culture around him? Did he move to the right? Or did the center move so far to the left that it left him standing in the exact same spot, suddenly looking like a radical?
That is something to chew on. From the Carpenter shop to the podcast charts. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Keep asking questions.
See you next time.